Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Dr. Paul Zach. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Rocky.
And I'm excited and happy for the conversation. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
My family was always struggling with money. Father who only went to high school and a mother who mostly didn't work. So they were struggling. My aunt, my godmother, who just passed away at 101 years old, God bless her, was a banker. And I'm a planner. I'm a careful person. And so it was really my aunt who taught me about money. And I do think that one of the most important things in life is to understand the magic of compounding.
It's pretty incredible what that will do, especially if you live to 101.
Yeah, I'm the trustee of her estate. I'm surprised how much she still had in her accounts at 101. So she was a good planner too.
Well, it continues to grow. Like it starts to multiply the older you get if you don't spend it all too early. I always say about Warren Buffett, I think the reason he's so rich is because he lived so long. And it's true because he didn't actually make most of his billions till later in life, and it was just the growth.
Exactly right. And he's also frugal. And I think anyone who runs a business ends up being frugal. I say I'm cheap, but why waste money? I love good things, but I don't buy frivolous stuff.
Frugality is good. We don't talk about that enough in today's world. Everyone wants to just spend money to buy happiness, and it doesn't seem to be working out too well. But we'll talk about that.
We will.
So, how did you get from there to be known as Dr. Love?
Well, I've snowed you all this time, Rocky, that you think I'm a human, but I'm actually a Martian. And I've been trying to figure out what these humans are doing for quite a while. Normal people would just integrate with other humans, but I run experiments to figure out why they're doing what they're doing because they can't tell me. So I run a busy behavioral neuroscience lab at Claremont Graduate University, and I'm very interested in social behaviors. So early in my career, there was so much focus on the bad behaviors humans have, which are actually easy to study. It's easy to induce bad behavior. I started thinking about the good behaviors. Most of us get along just fine. I was on 4 flights in the last 5 days. Nobody murdered each other. No one screamed. No, it was like fine. We're just getting along. Very unusual for animals to, be in a tube for 6 hours and not want to murder each other. I mean, maybe they wanted to murder each other, but no one did murder each other. So we began running experiments to try to elicit where this good behavior comes from in the brain. And I was really the first neuroscientist to show the key role of this neurochemical oxytocin at promoting pro-social behaviors. And it does that by increasing our sense of empathy. So if I'm empathic, if I'm sharing emotions with you, I'm less likely to hurt you in some way, emotionally, physically. And so that's how I got the nickname Dr. Love, because oxytocin is associated with care and love and attachment.
Is it easy to increase our oxytocin? How does that work? Or do I pop a pill?
Yes and no. I say hugs, not drugs, Rocky. Right. So oxytocin is a gift you have to give to somebody else. So it's very hard to get your own brain to make it. But if you are engaged in some positive social behavior, almost any positive social behavior with someone else, their brains release oxytocin and they almost always reciprocate. So the Dr. Love nickname came about because we showed that touch releases oxytocin. So as an experiment on myself, because I'm a Martian, I started, when people introduce themselves to me, I say, oh, I don't shake hands, I hug everybody. And I found that people right away connected to me much better. And so I'm famous for hugging everybody that I meet. I mean, as long as they're okay with that, of course. But anything you do together, dancing, singing, walking together, induces this shared emotional state and really physically connects us to each other. So we become better social creatures, nicer people. And by the way, oxytocin reduces your blood pressure, improves your immune system. So all these factors that are protective when you have a rich social network occur primarily because of the action of this neurochemical, which is ancient in origin.
You mentioned relationships. And I think it came out of the Harvard Grant study that one of the top factors was relationships driving happiness throughout life. And you kind of mentioned it there again. Is that where that came from, or did you have further research in that space?
Lots of research. So for people who are not aware, the Grant study at Harvard, study has been running about 70 years that followed, at that time, undergraduate males to look at the outcomes in life. And one of the key findings was the strength of their relationships with their mothers and fathers, strongly predicted their income, if they had good marriages, how long they lived, all kinds of things. So we've worked on a lot of those factors in terms of the neurology, like what's happening in the brain and how can you improve it. So I do think, Rocky, that knowing something and knowing what you can do about it to improve your life is important. So recent research out of Oxford University showed that about 50% of our happiness is due to having a rich social network. Awesome. What does that mean? How many people are in my phone contacts? It's not defined, right? So what we've done because of the knowledge we have about the neuroscience of social connection is create a way to measure the quality of the social relationships you're having. Are they creating enough neurologic value for you? So we have a free app called Six. Anyone can download that measures the value your brain's getting from social emotional experiences. In our published research, we show that you need 6 high-value experiences per day to thrive. That means you're passionate, you're engaged in life, you're doing things with other people, you're getting all this important emotional value that we need to really be part of life. 4, you're kind of maintaining. 3 or less, people start having depressive symptoms. They have low mood and low energy. And you can get these 6 high-value moments lots of ways. Playing with your dog, being on a conference call like this. It doesn't have to be in person necessarily. Watching a movie by yourself. I do a lot of writing, as you know, and so I'll get high-value moments by myself in something that I'm really getting a lot of emotional value from.
Do you find in a world where everyone is tied to their phone that they can do that digitally, or is that not so much happening?
Great question. So even pre-COVID lockdowns, we had done research on the value your brain gets from in-person experiences versus, say, video conference versus, say, texting or like, say, writing on X or, and actually, surprisingly, people will get their brains on average will get between 50 and 80% of the value of an in-person interaction when they're online. Even tweeting gives you like 50% of the value because your brain knows that your humans are out there, going to read your tweet. So surprisingly, we get a lot of value from the online experience. Here's an example, Rocky, which as a Martian I find fascinating, that people go to movie theaters and they'll cry in movies, right? So if you're neurologically intact, you're aware that this is a fictional story, these are paid actors, you know where you are, you're not on drugs. And when the dog dies or the boy dies in the movie, people are crying. I find that fascinating, but it just shows you how sensitive we are to social emotional information.
You said 50% was from that. What's the other 50? What's the rest of it that kind of drives that?
Yeah. So there are really 5 pillars for listeners that contribute to your thriving: diet, exercise, sleep, your social network, and having a sense of purpose and acting on it. So diet, exercise, sleep, we all know that. There's lots of apps you can use to measure that. And to me, that's table stakes. Rocky, if you're not sleeping or you hadn't had a meal in 12 hours, you get cranky or, you get low on glucose, you're not your best self. So you're not really thriving. But once you've got those things kind of nailed down, the next step is really investing in relationships. So that's a lot of it. The purpose part actually is pretty important, having a sense of purpose or meaning in life. And almost always that involves other people. So it goes right back to the social emotional component. So if I want to be a great tennis player, well, I got to play tennis with other people. I got to get a coach. I've got to do things. So it's social, right? And I don't know what sports you play, but the sports I play, yeah, meeting my friends and then we hang out and we have a beer or we have breakfast or whatever we're doing. It's a social activity besides the exercise component.
I find a lot, especially around the word purpose, people think purpose has to be this big, massive thing. I'm going to save 1 billion people and feed the planet and do all of these great things. But from the sounds of it, it doesn't need to be that big.
Another great question. Gosh, this is a fun conversation. Is purpose with a small p. So for listeners, think about something you do besides work and family that gets you excited to get out of bed, that feels like it gives you energy, that it makes you happy that you're on the planet, right? So that's small p purpose. So for many years, I was a sailor. I sailed a lot. I spent a lot of time on sailboats. I love sailing. I never owned a boat. I just, was on everyone else's boat and working. I'm a big guy, so I can, do all the things, all the heavy lifting. And man, I had some of the best times of my life on sailboats. All my friends got rid of their sailboats. They're all old. I'm not sailing anymore. But for a long time, that was my kind of avocation. I just love sailing. I read sailing books. I hung around sailors, right? That was small p purpose. Now, that involved other people. It involved helping other people. It involved, man, I helped people clean their boats. I did all kinds of weird stuff that wasn't precisely sailing, but it was in that network that really connected me to people. And some of those people are still some of my best friends today. So a lot of the purpose activities that are valuable to us are also difficult, right? So it's serving others. It's helping others do something. So if my purpose is to, I don't know, sleep 12 hours a day, well, okay. I mean, maybe, but it's not going to be very valuable. I mean, maybe if you're sick or something, but those purpose components almost always are helping other people or at least engaging in other people.
That makes sense. They've not created a pill, though, for oxytocin yet.
So we pioneered the way to get this into the human brain through the nose. We screwed it up your nose, and it turns out your nose is a good passageway. So I've actually Administered about 700 doses of synthetic oxytocin to people in the last 20 years. Haven't killed anybody, so that's good news. And we have used it in some clinical settings, but it's really important to train your brain to release oxytocin to be a better connector. So the brain's very adaptable. So here's a concrete example. And it turns out that, for example, in psychiatric disorders like autism that have impaired social behaviors, synthetic oxytocin additionally doesn't help it because the receptors are dysfunctional. The whole brain networks are dysfunctional. So there's no simple pill. But you can train yourself to be a better connector. So, Rocky, you can't tell, but I'm a big introvert. I can spend 12 hours in the lab, not talk to anybody, be totally happy. So, okay, so the hugs are actually training my brain to connect to other people. But I also started doing something that I really enjoy maybe 10 years ago, which is saying hello to people in elevators. So, again, as a Martian, I think it's really weird that humans are in a box for 20 or 30 seconds and pretend like there's no one else in there. So, I just say hi to people in elevators, which I find really amusing. Half the people kind of freak out, which somehow makes me happy. And the other half, you have this nice 20, 30-second conversation. Like I travel a lot, like hotels. Like, hey, where are you coming in from? Hey, you have a funny accent. Oh, yeah, I was in Amsterdam last year, and blah, blah, blah. So you have this really nice conversation. So to me, that's preparing ourselves to be better connectors, to invest a little bit in relationships. So when it's relationships that matter, we're tuned up to do that.
As an introvert, you seem comfortable kind of breaking social norms, talking to people in elevators, hugging them instead of shaking their hands. Where did that come from? Or is it just your experimental nature?
That's a good question. I guess I don't mind being wrong. One of the great things about science is that you're wrong most of the time, which means you learn something. And when you get comfortable being comfortable with being wrong, I don't mind breaking those social taboos. That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. But I'd like to run little experiments on the humans. I find them a really interesting species.
What are the things that people normally kind of take for granted or believe that are actually wrong in our interactions and so forth? Like when you've done these experiments, people come in with a whole set of beliefs, but when you actually test, you're like, no, that's all wrong, but yet we still believe it's right.
Oh, gosh, how much time do you have?
We have a lot.
Oh, so I'm a really a neuroscience reductionist. So I don't believe that there's such a thing as feelings. The feelings are our conscious appraisal of our emotional state. So when we ask people, I'll give you an example of a study in a second that did this, but ask people, do you like this thing? Do you think it's good? Would you be nice to this person? What they say consciously and what they do are completely at odds and what their brain responds to. I think one myth is that we have insight into our own emotional states. Because our brains produce language, we think we have insight into the 99% of brain activity that's unconscious. It's like asking your liver, well, how's it enjoying Rocky's lunch? You're like, that's just stupid. Having your conscious reporting of your unconscious states, they just don't talk to each other. This is not there. So here's a concrete example. We did a study after a bit of a challenge with an online streaming music service that I won't mention. Having coffee with a guy who was a research director there, and he said, our biggest problem is that there are 26,000 new songs released every day worldwide, and we have to somehow pick out which ones to suggest that people add to their playlists. And we are just drowning in information, and ultimately, we subcategorize them, and then we have a human listen to a 20-second snippet and give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. Well, that's a conscious appraisal of something that may change if you're tired or hungry or you had a fight with your spouse or whatever. So he said, could neuroscience predict hit songs? I'm like, no one's ever tried to do that. And the neuroscientists that have tried this are, well below 50%. I mean, not even close. Says, I don't know, send me a bunch of songs as soon as they come out. And then 3 months later, send me the number of downloads, number of additions to playlists, any outcome measures you want. I'm a behavior guy. I'm not a feeling guy, right? So we had people listen to these songs for the first time, ask them, do you like it? Would you hear it again? Would you share it with a friend? None of that predicted whether it was a hit song. But this valuation network that my research uncovered in the brain, which I've called immersion, that immersion signal, this 1 second frequency signal coming out of the brain, predicted hit songs with 97% accuracy 3 months before the songs were released. That's freaking crazy weird. So the unconscious parts of your brain know a hit song the first time it hears it, but your conscious part of your brain has no idea.
That's interesting. I was reading a book and I'm trying to remember the title. I don't remember it. And this was kind of, I think, in the early days of digital music. And what they found was if a bunch of people said they liked it, it grew the popularity of the song regardless of whether it was great or not. And it just simply had to do that there was social proof that you should listen to this. So in other words, there'd be 10 songs on the list and they'd be sorted from 100 people said this one, then 80, then 60. And so people just kind of assumed. And so that's what took off the popularity. And they even looked at books and other types of things. And they said it was kind of a network factor that if a bunch of people said yes, that it drove it. Now, that's different than what you're saying, because I get it. And there is, I forget the area that, but there's Muscle Shoals, or there's a whole area that all of these songs came from. And these guys had that. There
Oh,
was
in
like a
Sweden.
guy.
Yeah, there's these Swedish guys that produce all
Yeah.
the pop songs, right?
No, but there was also a guy who naturally, I think, could figure out what your study did. Like, oh, that's going to be a hit because that has that certain little sound to it.
Maybe. Yeah.
But I don't know if you've seen that or
That,
done
yeah, I've
any.
heard that. So, but that argument is circular, right? So a lot of people liked it, therefore it's a hit. Therefore, a lot of people like it, right? So yeah, for sure. I mean, marketing matters. And as social creatures, crowdsourcing is always a good way to get information. We call this social proof, is very effective. Remember that, what was that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So in academic research on, like, you have three lifelines, right? And one of those is like, ask the audience, always the best. You don't want to call your stupid friend and get one piece of information. Why not get 200 people in the audience to vote on what the best answer is? So we certainly are social creatures, and we are influenced by crowds. Sometimes the madness of crowds also sends us the wrong direction. But there are very few people who can bat 1,000, right? There's a rare Warren Buffett. There's a rare, I don't know, Peter Lynch. But besides that, everyone else regresses to the mean, right? Most actively managed investment funds don't beat the market.
They don't. So, what inspired you to write the book, The Little Book of Happiness?
Total laziness. So it's little. Yeah. So this is actually based on 15 years of research on what we had talked about. So great. Knowing those 5 pillars of happiness, awesome. Again, just to repeat for the group: diet, exercise, sleep, a rich social network, and a sense of purpose. What the heck do I do about it? So because my purpose in life is not only create new knowledge, but technology, so people can live longer, happier, and healthier lives. I put a lot of thought over many years on what do we do to improve the quality of our social relationships. And so that essentially means putting you ahead of me. So if we think of the opposite, like the 7 deadly sins, those are all about selfishness, about I'm more important than somebody else. So the virtues are the opposite. It's about, how do I make you the most important person in my life for the next 10 minutes or the next 10 years, whatever that is? And so, yeah, I went through the 45 cardinal virtues, identified what they do in the brain, define them so you know exactly what they are, not just some vague words, and then get people ways to practice them. Just like talking to people in elevators helps train me to be a better connector. So basically, it's a workbook that you can spend 6 months or so reading and literally checking off boxes, saying, oh, I'm going to try this activity to be a better connector, to invest in relationships, to build my happiness. And of course, when you're happy, happiness is contagious, so the people around you will also be happier.
How is that going over in a world that today seems to be all about me? Not me personally, but
Well, you're good. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the premise of the question. I mean, we look at the amount of mental health crises in young people. I mean, across age groups, but young people in particular. It really concerns me. Suicide's in the top 3 causes of death for um, people living in the U.S. ages 20 to age 75. I mean, this is an epidemic. So a lot of that's driven by loneliness. And so if me's more important than you, then I am also impairing my own ability to thrive as a human being. So we really do need other people. Like I said, I work alone a lot of days because of just the nature of my job. But when I'm with the humans, and because I use our 6 app to tell me what's most valuable, I get so many high value moments like, oh, I love the humans. I forgot. I have to pretend to be a human more often and interact with people. And so, yeah, I think I think of this app, Rocky, as your sweet little Lalvani. So it must be Italian. You're Italian?
no, I'm actually from India.
India. Gosh, I had no idea. Okay. So this is your little Indian grandma in your app saying, Rocky, Rocky, remember, connect to the humans, be nice to the humans. So when the app actually shows you that when you interact with humans and you get a key moment, you're like, oh, of course, right? So it's just this little reminder on what's most important to you. The app links to your calendar and your location. So it shows you exactly what you're doing that's most valuable to your brain, which is unconscious. You don't know it because feelings don't predict anything. And so by having this ability to learn about yourself, your true unconscious state, people can make better decisions. And those decisions are almost always about connecting to other people, being kind to other people. You already know, you met me, you spend enough time with me, you know that I'm a funny guy, I'm weird, I like to play with people, I like to talk to the waitress and make jokes. And I find that really amusing, but also I want to make someone's day better. So, as an example, some years ago, Time Magazine asked me to write 3 sentences for it's lots of people, but you had 3 sentences to write about your New Year's resolution, which I'm against as just a philosophical rule. I mean, if you want to make a change in life, just change. Why wait till January 1st? But anyway, I got 3 sentences. Like, what can you do? So because I'm a math science guy, I always think in equations. And so, I said that my goal in life is what I call love plus. I want to ensure that every interaction I have with a human adds love to the world, doesn't subtract love. So at night, when I'm going to bed, I reflect and ask, for every interaction I had, did I make that person happier? Was I caring? Was I kind? If I did, then I'm following my rule, which is make the world a slightly better place. Maybe I really am Dr. Love. Who knows? But I think it's not a bad way to go through life. Another way a friend of mine at Amazon described it was API, always presume positive intentions. So assume positive intentions. Sorry, couldn't get that out. So we're friends, Rocky, we're hanging out, and then someday you're just cranky to me. What we've shown in published research is that usually it's good people having bad days. It's not you're a bad person. You didn't suddenly become a bad person. You're having a bad day. You didn't even know it. Your brain's doing something different because you haven't eaten in 12 hours, or I don't know, your wife yelled at you, or I don't know what happened. You may not even know. So if you assume positive intentions, then I'm like, what should I do? Rocky's cranky with me. I should be more caring. I should say, hey, my friend, let's go grab a beer. Let's go hang out. Or do you need a break, right? We're working on this project together and you're just not able to, that's okay. You can't work today. That's fine. Go home. I'm cool with that.
We started this whole conversation of this part with loneliness. What's driving the loneliness societally? I mean, we're more connected than ever, essentially. You can even find friends on apps, probably. You can go to meetup groups. There's so much more ability to connect, and yet we're lonelier.
It certainly is multifactorial. One is small family size. So I grew up with 3 sisters. Between them and all their friends, we had tons of people around, but we see very small family sizes, one child or no children. And so we kind of lose that ability. Again, what the brain is such an energy hungry organ. What you don't do constantly, you kind of lose the ability. So I took German in high school. I speak zero German. I've never used it. I haven't been in Germany in, I don't know, 15 years. Hard language anyway. So anyway, my German is never going to come back because I lost it. So if we're not constantly engaged with people, then we sort of lose that ability. Hence my talking to people in elevators and training myself. So online, again, we've established online isn't so bad. It can be a substitute. Screens are not terrible. They're not the end of the world. But we do have, as you mentioned earlier, Rocky, this sort of social contagion where if we think a lot about being in this anxious, unhappy state, then the people around us get infected by those emotional states. So emotions are very contagious. And so I think we have to give people the ability to gain that confidence to be out in the world, to meet new people, to face new challenges. We have to suffer to grow. There's something called post-traumatic growth. So, our brains just want to survive and reproduce and not spend a lot of energy. So it's until we are forced to struggle that we have a chance to grow. Otherwise, we're not going to grow. So I think we've protected kids so much. I have 2, but I've done the same thing. Give them so much protection that they haven't struggled sometimes in life. I was at a University of Texas is a Center for Brain Health, a really wonderful place. And I gave a talk there recently. And someone in the audience, an older woman, said, "What's wrong with these young people? They don't seem to want to work hard." And I said, they're young. They haven't been beat up by life. They're not scarred up like us old people. And, they're going to figure it out. So, we were young and naive once and probably a little bit lonely. And I think that area where you get out of school and you're starting a new job and maybe you don't have a partner, it's tough. But for a lot of us, we grow because of that. We learn more about ourselves, which makes us more attractive to romantic partners. We learn what we love doing in life. We find some job or maybe some avocation that gives us energy. So I think it takes a little while. I'm hoping, I'm a hopeful person, so I'm hoping these young people will be able to come out of that loneliness hole that they're in.
Is it generational? What I mean by that is, and you kind of alluded to it, but I'm not sure that every young generation goes through that, or is it different with this generation?
Yeah, there's no really real data for a loneliness epidemic that almost all generations go through a point where they feel disconnected. Their self-reported happiness is low. So that kind of happiness curve is like a U. We tend to be unhappy when we're young because we're just trying to figure stuff out. When you're real young and when you're a kid, you have people have kids are happy. What's better than being a kid? But then, in this 20s and 30s, you're kind of struggling. You have kids and you're stressed. And then as you get older, what we find is people really have a positive attitude as they get in their 50s and 60s because they've learned how to emotionally regulate. They've found something, hopefully, in life that they love doing. They have people around them that care about them. Rocky, isn't it? I'm 63. Isn't it great when you're old enough where you have guy friends that you can just tell them you love them? Like guys you've been through some stuff with, and you're like, doesn't bother me anymore. I just tell my friends I love them, and they know. Like we've been through a lot of stuff together. I'm going to be there. I have a friend who's got a surgery out of state in a couple of weeks. I'm like, who's going with you? Like, oh, my mom's going to go. Like, if she drops out, call me. I'll cancel my schedule. I will come up there and sit with you. You got to have people in your life. So if you have a couple people like that, you're actually in really good shape in terms of happiness and longevity. Just need 2 or 3 people that outside your family that really care about you. So to me, the book is about investing in those relationships. Like, how do I build that up? Okay, here's some practical things you can do. They're going to be slightly uncomfortable. Like talking to people in the elevator seems kind of weird. But if you practice this, then your brain will adapt to being a better connector, to really investing in those relationships.
Yeah, I've noticed that when people come up and they just start talking to you, it's like all of a sudden the tension leaves. And yet I'll even admit that it's hard for me to start that conversation because I'm an introvert. I'm like busy running around, focused on what I'm doing. And I notice that all the time. My wife's the opposite. So she's the connector. I let her take care of it.
Isn't it lovely to have a wife that does that for you? It's the best.
It
But
is.
again, you
It
need that
works well.
your little Indian grandma reminding you, hey, Rocky, say hi to the humans. I feel like, so there's a saying in science, Rocky, that all research is me search. We research
Mm.
the things we're weak in. So I think I was not a good connector. I was like you, too focused, too much energy. I don't need to sleep. I can go and go and go. And I would just leave people behind and I wouldn't really form very strong friendships. And then after doing this research, starting in the early 2000s, I'm like, I'm really stupid, right? I have done the research showing how important social connection is to health and happiness. I've got to invest in those relationships. So when I turned 50, I remember I had 4 surprise birthday parties. Not because I'm such a wonderful person, because I had really invested in a lot of relationships. I'm like, man, I never had 4 parties as a kid. Like, this is awesome. There are people on the planet who, at least care enough about me to throw me a surprise birthday party. That was awesome.
It is awesome. So, how does this app work? I mean, is it somehow tied to our nervous system or using some kind of devices to pull through or?
Yes, and yes, you nailed it. So because we need to get neurophysiologic data, and any new technology, there's magic involved in it. And the magic is we traced out how to capture this network in the brain I've called immersion that values social emotional experiences from the brain's output file, the cranial nerves. And it turns out some of these cranial nerves pass through your heart. So if you can give me a time series of your heart rate, I can transform that into what the brain's telling the rest of the nervous system. And so any old wearable, Apple Watch, Samsung Galaxy, Whoop, or a Ring, we don't care what device you have, but we've written code in the cloud that immediately transforms second by second how much your brain is valuing that experience. And what is valued is what is acted on. And having this simple goal, 6 high value moments a day, again, well defined. The app does all the work for you. Doesn't ask you any weird questions. It's running in the background, 1-second frequency. So you can just see, oh yeah, here's the 3 things I did today that was most important to building up my own emotional fitness. And that's awesome, right? It's getting this insight.
So, does it tell you what it was, or do you have to go, oh, what did I do at 3:32 p.m.?
Yeah, it doesn't want to bother you. So it actually links to your phone and location. So it just runs in the background, doesn't ask you any weird questions. Now, if you have a really high value experience that's not on your calendar, it will ping you and say, if you want to make a note here so you remember what this is, you can do it, but you don't have to. So anyway, it's meant to be just non-invasive and simple and fun. It's gamified. And it has a social layer. By the way, this is also the coolest thing. I'm all about relationships, right? Dr. Love. You can share your data, not all your data, but just how many key moments a day you have with your friends and vice versa. So I had a friend yesterday that only had, by the end of the day, had 1 key moment. So I sent her a little, we call it flourish, a little emoji, like a smile emoji. Hey, thinking about you. So that's a way to connect using a screen that helps me maintain that relationship, but isn't difficult. Now, for people our age, Rocky, we could use these devices and actually, call people. Like, hey, Rocky, you shared you haven't had a high value moment in 5 days, dude. What's going on? Let's go get a coffee. Come talk to me. Yeah. Or, hey, this week was the best week ever. Like you had 6 high value moments 5 days in a row. What the heck's going on? Like, let's go celebrate. And so just having it, oh, this is great for your spouse, by the way, too. If you don't talk like me, now my wife can see, like, Paul had a great day or had a bad day. I may not want to talk about it, but at least you'll know, like, oh, yeah, you had a pretty awesome day today.
So I don't have to talk to her?
You don't have to talk to her at all. I'm going to remove all that. Your wife's going to kill me now.
No, it's fine. So you kind of made a comment that the brain kind of tells the heart, but is that the case, or is the heart telling the brain? Like, is that like, because I know that the gut and the brain, that's a big pathway in itself. The heart in all of this, which way are the signals really going?
Both directions, right? So when it's shocking, your brain's connected to a body and they have to talk to each other. So we're actually getting the output file, but the communication goes the other direction. Otherwise, you can't coordinate, right? So there's no little man sitting in your head pulling levers. It's not just a
There
top-down
is.
system. Oh, there
There is
is.
a
Okay,
mine.
for you. That's right. Your wife did mention that to me. So, okay. But yeah, I just think knowing about yourself, first of all, it's a very weird philosophical issue. And I'd love your feedback on this. If you want to live a longer, happier, healthier life, you have to know about what's most valuable to you. But what's most valuable to you is connection to other people. So if you're the most selfish person ever, you've actually got to invest in relationships to serve others so that you can live longer. Isn't that funny?
Well, that makes sense. I mean, most of the people that I know who are older and vibrant are very active. And I don't mean active in that they go to the gym every day. I mean, they're active with life. They might even still be working well into their 70s or beyond. And because they love what they do and it keeps them active. And I mean, I'm very big into studying longevity, and there is the whole physical part of it. But I also think that there is a massive emotional part of not just longevity, but life. Like, you'll notice some people, I think, just give up on life for whatever reasons. I don't know the reasons why, but you can see through the way they behave or they live or early death that it's like they almost just gave up.
Yeah. So there's two mechanisms there. So it's such a great point. One is that emotional responses are contagious. So for individuals who are around people who are unhappy, who are neurotic, it brings down your happiness. And if you're around people who are positive, who are energetic, who are excited about life, it brings up your happiness. And so you can't always choose who you're around. You can't really choose your family, but you can choose your friends and who you want to spend time around. And the app will actually show you that objectively. It's not just your guess. But yeah, when I hang out with Rocky, we always have fun. We're doing cool stuff together. Like, I got to spend more time with Rocky. He's awesome. And Susan, I don't know. I never have a good time with Susan. The app actually has a trained AI assistant. They'll start giving you advice and say, like, hey, whenever you see Susan, like, it's never valuable to you. So do you really need to have a meeting with her? Like, maybe you should, redirect what you're doing. So, and spend more time with Rocky, obviously.
So I could wear this and I could find which of my clients are good and which of my clients drive me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's something to be said about firing clients, right? There are clients who are just too much trouble. I know it's hard, I'm an entrepreneur. It's hard. I fired some subscribers to our platform. They're just, I don't know, they just won't leave you alone. You're not making any money from them. They just keep bothering you. I'm like, I just think maybe we're not the right, you know, subscriber. We're not the right software for you. Like, I just think we're not going to ever be able to satisfy you, and I just think we should call it quits before we murder each other. So,
I'm just lucky that all my clients are awesome, so I don't have that problem. Well, that's part of our intake, you
yeah,
know? It
that's the key. You've got to intake
Yeah,
the right people.
we intake the right people. There are a whole lot of virtues in the book that you talk about. Are there some that are undervalued but have a much greater impact that we don't realize?
I think they all are valuable. The Greek philosopher Cicero said that gratitude is the mother of all virtues. So I do think being thankful, being gracious, grace is one of the ones I also like a lot. I think having grace, having respect for yourself and other people is something that's so beautiful. One of the virtues is patriotism. Be excited about where you live, right? I'm not perfect. Our country's not perfect, but you should be thrilled about where you are. Anyway, I think there's a bunch in there that will kind of stretch people a little bit, and the suggestions on how to implement that in your life. There's some ideas to try. You don't have to do there's 150 things to do in there. So literally 150 things. So you don't have to do all those, but think about, how do I build gratitude in my life, or how do I become a person filled with grace. I think it's a great approach.
I think Tony Robbins says when you turn your expectations into appreciation, everything gets a little bit nicer.
Mhm.
Your expectations of getting on that tube, as you talked about in the airplane, just to the appreciation of, oh my God, look, I get to fly.
Oh. It's so interesting now on planes that people will. I'm an aisle seat guy because I'm super tall, but the people just close the blinds. They're not even looking out the window. Like you're at 37,000 feet over this amazing country, but you're so hooked to your screen that you want a dark plane so that you can like look out the window once in a while. Like it's amazing. Anyway, that's just me, but I'm working very hard, Rocky, to really live in the present, to be fully here for everything I'm doing. I turn off my phone, I turn off my email, and try to make sure I'm 100% focused on what I'm doing.
How do you do that? How do you be present in the moment? Because I still struggle with that.
Yeah, I don't think I have the secret factor, but certainly turning off electronics is the right way to do it. Honestly, the best way to do it is I block out time on my calendar. So my wife was like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I'm like, "Whatever my calendar tells me." So I'll just block out time for writing or time for working out. I block out time to take walks. I just walk. I have high energy. You can always tell. So I'm not good at meditating. I can't sit still. But if I'm walking and let my mind wander, I will solve a lot of the problems I'm facing that day. And I walk by myself, so I'm not chatting with anybody. And so, yeah, I think that it's sometimes called walking meditation. I find it really useful where I'm just trying to smell the flowers, look at the leaves, be fully present. And that works better if you're in a place where there's not a lot of people. Yeah, I did a lot of walking this weekend, and my hips hurt because I was climbing, hills. But I got 14 things done in my brain, and I got back to my house and I wrote them all down, and I'm good to go.
Nice. People resist change, right? So, what have you found? Like, how do you help to reduce that barrier or eliminate it?
So first off, to trying to get others to change is very difficult neurologically because our brain saves energy by doing the same thing over and over. And that's why I can't speak German, but I can still speak Portuguese because I speak Portuguese more often and I can get by on Portuguese. So what you do, what your brain values and what your brain does is what you're going to do. So habits are normal and it's hard to change a habit. There's a couple ways to do that. One is to pre-announce to the people around you what you're going to do. So this year I'm going to go back and I'm going to relearn how to speak German. How are you going to do that? I'm going to get a tutor that meets with me once a week, and I'm going to get my old German book out and start to read it. Great. So I'm making a public announcement, which means my friends are going to hold me accountable. The second is to, as I said with the calendar, put systems in place, right? Commit to it and then have a system. Just say, I'd like to lose 10 pounds this year. Well, gosh, everyone wants to lose 10 pounds. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to get a personal trainer, or I'm going to get a dietitian, or I'm going to join Weight Watchers, or whatever that is, right? You've got to actually have a system in place to do it. And then finally, to change a habit, you need feedback. Right. So this is, I think, why Weight Watchers was a brilliant idea in the olden days. I think they're bankrupt now, but anyway, in the olden days, because you had a group of people that all had the same goal and they had feedback. You had a scale. You had to step on that scale every week in front of your friends. So you had this social pressure to conform to this new goal that you set. So I think those are the key ways to change a habit.
Still difficult, but little by little.
Sure. And baby steps. I mean, yeah, that's a very good point. So yeah, don't say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds this week. Go, okay, over some reasonable period of time, over the next 2 months, I could lose 10 pounds. I can do that by cutting out carbs or by fasting once a week or whatever that is, right? So lots of ways to do it. But yeah, I think baby steps, as you do those baby steps, everything gets easier once you have some momentum.
When you said that, it reminded me of Parkinson's law. I don't know,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So if you say 10 pounds in 2 months, most people were going to wait for 8 weeks to work on the 10
Right.
pounds. So do we need to redefine it and say I'm going to lose a pound a week for 10 weeks versus
I think
doing
you're
that?
right. I think that's better. Yeah. Short-term goals are much better than long-term goals. You're exactly right. Yeah. So
Because
baby
otherwise,
steps.
yeah, baby step, but breaking it down, actionable in a short period of time because we humans procrastinate.
Right. With consequences, right? So I
Are
meet my
there?
goal, something good happens. I don't meet my goal, and then something negative is going to happen. So,
If we get that feedback, I think in today's world, that feedback is less and less. Even with kids, the feedback is less and less. Like in school and so forth, if you get an excuse or, in the old days, it's due, this is the cutoff. You're done. Your life is going to end. Now it's like you had to breathe today. Okay, it's due tomorrow.
yeah, we're probably too soft. I think my wife was better at disciplining my kids than I was. I have girl children. I can't discipline a girl. But I do think having that accountability is really important. In fact, that's one of the virtues is holding people accountable. So I think, at least in my world, by personality and by training, I'm a skeptic about everything. And so sometimes people think I'm a disagreeable person, which I'm not. I'm very agreeable, but I'm very precise on whether you're saying something that's clear to me. Whether like you asked me a question, I had to clarify. I don't like the premise of that question, so I'm going to try to restate it. I'm a very precise person, and so um, that's because I want to learn. I want to understand exactly what we're doing here. So I think there's a sense in which most people just want to get along. I don't want to rock the boat. But, my kids who I love to death, I hold them accountable all the time. And I told them the same thing I tell my graduate students because I care about you. I'm trying to get you the hell out of my house, lab. You need to survive on your own. So if I don't hold you accountable, you're not going to learn how to actually meet these goals that are important for life. Opening a checking account, pay your credit card bill on time, finish school, whatever those things are.
How do you hold them accountable without being a pain in the ass?
Kind of being a pain in the ass. So I had my lab meeting today and I had to tell them, like, I have a student who just did a bunch of stuff that he didn't check with me on, and I don't think it's right. And I said, you can convince me that you've done the right thing, but this is so out of the norm that anybody who reads your scientific paper is going to put a red flag up. So, and I had to tell them, look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm trying to make you, if someone reads this paper, it has clinical applications, it may have policy applications. And if it's wrong, you can imperil a lot of people's lives. So let's be super clear that this has got to be as close to 100% perfect as possible. And right now, I have a lot of questions. So if I'm questioning it and I know what you're working on, imagine what some random reviewer of your paper or another scholar will think. And so it's not that I'm a picky son of a bitch, it's that we have to get this thing right. So just like my kids, there's some things you just have to do right, right? You got to lock the doors at night. You can't leave the keys in your car. I mean, we all make mistakes. I get that. But there are some things that just have to be done for safety, for survival.
That's true. So, being a Martian, what is it that you see as weird with us humans? What surprised you the most?
That's a great question, Rocky. Honestly, I'm surprised. I mean, many things, but I'm surprised at how much the humans have embraced me. So I was speaking in 3 cities this last week, and I must have hugged 100 people easy. And for some reason, people want to hear what I have to say on a stage. Not sure why. But I find the humans to be so curious and so kind almost all the time. One of the talks I gave was the speaker before me was running long. He's a friend of mine. And the organizer didn't know what to do. And I said, I'll go up there and interrupt him. And is an old friend of mine. Anyway, and so I just was making it like, what's wrong with you? You're interrupting this thing. And of course, he hugged me and he kissed me in the head and everyone was laughing. And so it was so funny to have a 6-year-old guy kiss me in the head because he's been a friend for a long time and I just love him, right? It was hilarious in front of this big audience of people. And so that to me is really sweet. It just tells you how innately nice so many human beings are. Yeah, there's a small subset that are cranky, but again, for listeners, mostly it's good people having bad days that are behaving badly. It's not bad people on their own.
I think if they turn off social media, they probably have your viewpoint more than what they're reading on a daily basis.
And turn off the news. I've been off the news for more than 10 years. I don't watch it. I'll read on my phone occasionally, but this all eyeballs, right? So I saw this thing recently that I think on Twitter, 80+% of the stuff posted on Twitter is from like 2% of the individuals. So it's a noisy minority. It's not the public square. It's just noisy people making noise.
And most of them are bots.
Probably most who are just inflating everything else to, the nth degree. So trust yourself. People have good intuition. Trust the other humans. As you said, Rocky, crowdsourcing is one of the best things. Ask your friends. Before you make a big decision or decide on something, talk to people. It turns out they'll talk to you.
An amazing concept. What do you wish people would ask you about that they never do?
Boy, you're getting me some deep questions. You asked me a good one, which is like, how did you end up becoming a Martian? Yeah, I think we're unkind to people because we commit what's called the fundamental attribution error. So I try to be kind to everybody, even people. I've worked a lot with psychiatric patients and they have bad brains. Guess what? We all have bad brains. You don't sleep for 12 hours, you're cognitively impaired for sure, and you're emotionally impaired. So I'm super tolerant to everybody at this point. And I do that because I just think about this as a brain disorder, as opposed to you're a bad person, you're evil. I just think here's a person going through something different than me. Maybe they're behaving in a way that I don't find appropriate, but It's a human being and their brain's leading them in some path that seems odd to me, but it seems fine to them, right? Almost always. By the way, I've worked with criminal psychopaths. Have worked with people who are really evil. That's a different ballgame, but that's like 2% of the population. So 98% of the people, of the thousands we tested, when you see bad behavior, it's good people having bad days.
Is there a way to tell the difference between someone who's truly evil and someone who's just having a bad day?
Well, that's a great question. Sure. I mean, if you observe them over a long period of time, right,
It's
consistent bad
okay.
behavior is bad behavior. Generally, right? I mean, someone who's really aggressive, really unhinged, try to avoid.
No, I get that, but sometimes I guess I'm thinking of con artists. They're the nicest people in the
Mhm.
world. They come across very nice, and yet underneath there's all of that.
Oh, I used to have a blog at Psychology Today, and the most read blog there that I wrote was called How to Run a Con, exactly on the neuroscience of cons. I think it's still online. You guys can find it for free. Yeah, cons are very interesting because it's manipulative. And there certainly are psychiatric disorders like borderline personality disorder, in which people seem really nice, but they're really manipulating you. I think one of the most important things to share is that if you're going to make an important decision, the processes in the brain that allow you to integrate information are slow in the order of like minutes, but particularly that information is consolidated overnight. So when this old advice, like sleep on it before you make a big decision, it's exactly what the brain science shows you should do. So before you write that big check to someone you just met or the get rich quick scheme or whatever, or divorce or marriage, you should really sleep on it and let that information consolidate within all the other information you have. Doesn't mean you're not going to make bad decisions, just means you're going to make fewer bad decisions.
Things tend to settle too once
Yeah,
you
nothing's that
sleep on it.
urgent. Yeah. If it's
It's
that
just,
urgent, it's probably a mistake, right?
well, I think part of it is the excitement of the moment slips away. And so now you're not emotionally hyped up. And then you can make a probably a wiser, slower decision.
Yeah, wisdom is really contextualizing information, right? So when we go from information to knowledge to wisdom, it's really having enough of a foundation, having been on the planet long enough and having absorbed enough things that you can really make what looks like a wise choice as opposed to just an informed choice.
Makes a lot of
I
sense.
having gray hair.
What belief or habit has given you the greatest return on life?
I'm going to answer two questions. That's a great question, Rocky. The first is exercise. The second is assume positive intentions for everybody I meet.
And you do that second one super well. I haven't seen you exercise, so I don't know, but just throughout this whole conversation, you've always talked about the positive intentions, whether it's on the elevator or wherever you are, and building that. So you're living it. That's true.
Appreciate it.
What's one internal shift that you made that changed everything else in your life?
Such a deep question. I'm trying to answer it succinctly. This is going to sound weird, but it's investing in myself first. If I would be an effective human being, I've got to make sure I'm doing what's important for me so I can be of service to others. So that means exercise, eating healthily, getting enough sleep. And then I can be an effective human being, an effective researcher. I can be an effective entrepreneur. But I really got to invest in myself first, or else I'm not useful for anybody else.
They tell you that on that airplane too. Put
Yeah,
on
put the
your air
mask on.
mask first
Hey,
before you help
that's
anyone
exactly
else.
right. Bingo.
That's it. And you have to. I mean, you can't give from a negative balance. You can give from surplus. And so that's why, rich people aren't evil. If they have money, they can give it. Poor people really, I mean, they can help, but not that kind of impact. And it's the same thing. Whether you're rich or poor internally also makes that thing. What's one thing about you that success can't take away?
I think success won't take away anything from me. I would hope. I think I've so exceeded the expectations I had for myself when I was young, or even the people around me had for me, that I'm so grateful to be here and to have people that love me and to feel like I'm being of service to the world. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I think I've done everything I can do to be a good human.
That's awesome. And I feel bad for those people who didn't have faith in you, but it's
I
okay.
think it was low expectations. When you come from a, lower middle class family where you're struggling to get enough food on the table, there was no discussion of education. There was just, but then you find some mentors that have some faith in you and see some promise and open up vistas that you never imagined. And I'm so grateful to those wonderful people. And I try to, again, do the same for those around me.
That's awesome. It's funny because we asked that question about money at the beginning, and a good amount of the people who are successful did not come from a perfect childhood. Many of them came from a imperfect childhood, and it was that imperfect childhood that actually gave them the push to go forward. That's not to say everyone will. Half go one way, half go the other, but it seems like it was a driving force for a lot of people.
Yeah. Going to bed hungry is a great motivator to work hard not to be in that situation.
That it is. If people would like to learn more about you, the book, the app, how do we do this?
The book is The Little Book of Happiness, A Scientific Approach to Living Better. Find it on Amazon. The app is free. It's at your six, the number six, your6.com. And if you're listening to this, you must be an awesome human. So on the Your Six website, you can send in questions if you have them, and happy to reply.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. It was a ball.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.